Good morning, good evening from Dublin, everybody here on Better Reading and Facebook Live. My name's Monica McInerney, and it is my big pleasure to be talking to you all today, to the wonderful Mary Lou Stevens, to mark the publication week of her second novel, which is called The Chocolate Factory. And over the next half an hour, it's going to be my big pleasure to talk to Mary Lou all about her new book. Hello, Mary Lou.
Hello, Monica. How absolutely gorgeously wonderful to see you. And I think everyone will be so happy to see you. So before you start asking the questions, I've got one question for you, which is, you've said you're on long service leave. How's it going? How are you feeling?
I'm loving it, I have to say. I'm missing writing, but after 22 years and about 16 books, I decided I just needed to press pause for a little while. So it's been terrific. I'm filling up the well. I've got all sorts of ideas bubbling, and I've also done more reading than I've done in my life, I reckon. So most of the books behind me here in Dublin. But no, it's great. And yeah, but dying to get back to the writing and talking to readers again soon. But that's enough about me. Tell me, you and I, well, we've known each other really on and off for about 15 years, I suppose, in that you've had many careers. You've taken the scenic route to being an author. And I know that you trained at the Victorian School of Arts as a performer and musician, and you were in bands for many years, and then you had a wonderful career in radio. We spoke many times when you were on ABC radio. And then now you are a full-time writer, but you're also doing something really extraordinary that since we spoke last for your first book, The Last of the Apple Blossom, you've changed your entire life in terms of where you're living and what you're doing. Would you tell us all about before we get into the specifics of The Chocolate Factory, what is your life now, Mary Lou?
Well, it's lovely to be back in Australia. I've just spent a year slow traveling through Asia. So my husband and I, we are slow travelers. So we go to a country for as long as a tourist visa will let us, and we book accommodation. We're considered low-income earners in Australia, but we can travel like this indefinitely. There's a couple of things. There's something called geo-arbitrage, which basically means just going to places with a lower cost of living than Australia, which, let's face it, is most places. But my husband discovered this because when I did leave the ABC, he said, "What do you want to do next?" And I said, "I want to travel and write." So the first thing he came up with was that we could afford bicycles and a tent. No, that's not going to happen. And eventually he found slow travel, and it's working a treat. It's really interesting. And I have visited chocolate factories wherever we have gone.
I bet you have.
So much chocolate. And there are lots of passionate chocolate makers. The bean-to-bar scene in Vietnam is just going through the roof. And everywhere we've gone, because cacao grows so easily through there. So there's lots of farmers, there's lots of cacao, there's lots of chocolate.
And tell me, had you started writing The Chocolate Factory? I can just see lots of people are online. Hello, everybody. Anna McKay, Carolyn Manners, Lynn Richards, Yvonne Luckhurst, Sally Smith, Julietta Henderson, a fellow author, the Happy Valley Book guys, Deborah Lloyd, lots of people. Thanks so much for joining myself and Mary Lou, and I hope you enjoyed all the chat about Mary Lou's new book. Had you started writing The Chocolate Factory before you set off travelling and started visiting chocolate factories in other places?
I had. So we had decided to go slow traveling, and then, of course, COVID happened. So there we were. We weren't going anywhere. No one was going anywhere. And I got the book deal for The Chocolate Factory, and I was relieved that I could actually just do all the research and stay in Tasmania. Not in Tasmania, I was on the Sunshine Coast. And I did manage to get down to Tassie because we were both green states there for a long time, so I could go between the two. But it gave me time to just get the drafts under my belt. And so just as we were leaving Australia, I handed in, I think it was the 5th draft I handed in. I know, Monica, from working with you, that you like 10 drafts before it goes to the publisher. I managed to do 5 before I sent it off. And then, of course, there are all the other drafts that happen once your publisher gets a hold of it. But yeah, I was happy because there was a lot of research involved. And it was
Right.
just
We'll talk about that in a minute. I can't wait to hear that. Let's talk just a little bit about it. It's very hard to talk about the chocolate factory without talking about all the words I want to use to describe it. I'm going to get you to give everybody the summary of the story, but just from my point of view as a reader, it's historical fiction. It's set in the 1920s. It's set in Tasmania, and it's about the setting up of the Cadbury factory and the women and the men involved in it. And it is delicious. It is very hard to put down. There are so many layers to it. It's beautifully written. Mary Lou has a particular gift for describing landscapes and scenery, and I think your musician's ear comes through so much with your dialogue that I could hear. I kept hearing, I'd love to hear an audiobook of this. And also it's full of obviously descriptions of food and chocolate, and it's also absolutely fascinating, Mary Lou, about how a factory is set up, about the way women were involved, because after the war, there were less men around to do factory work, so women, stepped up and did brilliantly at it. So please tell me, I would love to know, what was your actual starting point for the chocolate factory? I know you're from Tasmania. What was the moment that you thought, actually, I want to go right back in time and find out how this iconic factory was set up?
I think it's the memory of going to the Cadbury's factory when I was a girl. They don't do tours anymore, sadly, but it is a completely immersive experience in a way. The smells, which are quite overpowering at the start of the process before the chocolate becomes delicious, the sounds, all the women working there. And I had my first cup of drinking chocolate with hot cocoa at the end of the tour, and used to get lots of free chocolate and stuff like that. And also 1922 was when they first started producing chocolate. So it was the 100th birthday. So it was very front of mind to me at that time. And I'm just really grateful that 2024 is the 200th anniversary of Cadbury's. So it's come out the perfect year as far as I'm concerned, because there is a lot of stuff about Bourneville, because Dorothy, one of the main protagonists, that's where she pretty much grew up. She was working there from the age of 13, which was pretty normal back then. And it was her family. And that's where she learnt a lot of the stuff that she brings to Tasmania in her position. She gets a promotion to come out to Tasmania. And so all of that combined. And also I went to the Friends School here in Hobart, which is the largest Quaker school in the world. And Quakerism, as I get older, appeals to me more. It's a philosophy. It's not a religion. They don't have clergy. There's no hierarchy. And their philosophy is one of pacifism, of course. That's what they're probably most famous for. Stewardship of the earth, simplicity, social responsibility, temperance, which is how all the Quakers got into making chocolate, because all the big chocolate factories, Rowntree's, Fry's, Terry's, Cadbury, all Quaker families started them, because hot cocoa was seen as a healthy and cheap alternative to alcohol, which was just such a big social problem back then. So my connection with the Quakers as well, and just this beautiful, peaceful, social philosophy of theirs, which I love. And I enjoyed being able to weave that through the book as well.
And you do it with such a light hand, Mary Lou. That's what I'm saying to everybody who's joining us. Carol Handel, all sorts of people are saying that they've read it already. A delicious book, Mary Lou, Carol says. So there's people agreeing that, and lots of people from Hobart joining us. In fact, sorry, the name is whipped by, but somebody who's just up the road from the Cadbury's factory.
Oh, how wonderful.
And that's what I found so fascinating. Like, I got completely swept away with following the two main characters. It's Dorothy, a young woman who's come out from Bourneville in the UK to help set up the new factory, and a young woman called Maisie, who's from a poorer family in Hobart. And what a lifeline Cadbury setting up this factory is for the Tasmanian society, or Hobart society, that work is scarce. And you paint that so amazingly well of this young one, and they're also young, wanting to get work, needing to get work, and what this means. And so all of you who haven't read The Chocolate Factory, you're in for such a treat, because as I said, it's not only a page-turning novel. You really care about these women and young Maisie and Dorothy and how are they going to get the factory up and running? But just all those layers through of Quakerism, of what a Quaker philosophy would bring to the setting up of a factory, as well as the mechanics of setting up a factory. Now, I would not normally pick up an engineering book to read to find out how machines work, and and how do they get the chocolate around, something with a delicious centre. But when you read Mary Lou's book, you're with all these characters learning what they're learning at the same time, and there's so much drama. And it's beautifully done. So I'd love to ask that, Mary Lou, is the mechanics of setting up a factory. Did you do an engineering degree as you were traveling around Asia? And how do you know so much? And could you go in and fix a machine in Cadbury if you got asked?
Not a machine that is a modern machine. I might be able to fix an enrober. But this is the thing. Dorothy was working at Cadbury's during the war, and all the men were, called up, and all the engineers got taken into the armed forces as well. So there were no engineers to keep these big machines going. So she stepped up to the mark and she learned how to fix them. So she knows how to do everything. Actually, finding out about the exact enrobers that came out to Australia, because they're her baby. She does love them.
And enrobers, for those who haven't read the book, enrobers is literally the people that wrap the chocolate around the centre.
But it's a machine. So they used to do what was called fork and bowl work, where they used to dip the chocolate by hands. And so what we have in this book is the encroachment of modern technology, and some people are worried about it, but Dorothy just embraces it. So an enrober is a machine where the chocolates go through and there's a waterfall of chocolate that falls over them. Yes, so I couldn't fix a machine today. I'd probably have to call on Dorothy. She probably work it out. But it was interesting. There is a heritage officer in Melbourne for Cadbury's, and he was a godsend, and I would send him questions all the time. It was a bit tricky during COVID because he would have to go to the Bourneville Heritage archives, and not many people were working in them back then, but we managed to get the job done. But yeah, he was fabulous. And the other thing I really enjoyed researching about this book was the industrial espionage. So this is chocolate and spies and Quakers, and the industrial espionage was just massive during this time. And because dairy milk chocolate, and I have to hold this up, dairy milk
placement,
was the most popular chocolate in the world at that time, and everyone was out to steal the recipe. And other manufacturers would literally, they would send spies into their opponents' factories, posing as employees, and then the factories would employ detectives to try and sniff out these spies. And it's all going on. And when my publisher asked me, is this based on fact? I said, yeah. And I quoted all the stuff I'd found and said it was just full on. They were all after each other's trade secrets, and dairy milk was the holy grail. And I said, have you read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? There's this passage where Grandpa Joe says to Charlie, well, the reason Willy Wonka shut those gates and you don't see people coming in and out anymore is because of the spies. And Roald Dahl actually was a taste tester as a boy for Cadbury's. The boarding school he went to was close by to Bourneville. And it started his lifelong love of chocolate. My God, that man loved chocolate. And so he was inspired by all the stories he heard at the time about this industrial espionage and all these massive machines that were in the Cadbury factory. And that's where Charlie and the Chocolate Factory came from. So that's based on truth a little bit as well.
Oh, well, that's the thing, because there's so much going on in your book. And that's why I just want to recommend it wholeheartedly to everybody that's joining us. That exactly as Lynn Richards, hello Lynn, has just said, she just loved all the intertwined storylines. It is exactly that. There's romance, there's just absolutely fascinating historical detail, but there is a spy story. There absolutely is this, and I didn't realize that it would be so secret, and that because it's set in 1920, it's not like that someone's trying to hack into a computer. it's in a safe somewhere and someone's trying to get it. So yeah, you've just done a beautiful job, Mary Lou, of that, of all these different elements of the story that you just want to find out, what's going to happen next. And that's, that, as I said, like chocolate, it's very hard to put it down because there's just there's so much happening, and you've such a sure hand as well. Like, you can feel that you love doing the research, but it never takes over from the story. You just learn so much while you're traveling with Dorothy, the older English woman, and young Maisie. Can you talk to me a little bit about your two main characters, who do take us by the hand as readers through this fascinating novel? How did you choose those? How did you decide what they were like, these two young women?
I'm eternally grateful to Emma Robertson, who wrote a thesis piece called Bells of Bristol and Birmingham, because some of the women came out from Fry's as well. It was Cadbury Fry Pascal, but everyone just called it Cadbury's, which really annoys one of my characters who came out from Fry. And it was just a fascinating discourse on the women who were employed to come out. And I just dived into that, boots and all, and I was emailing her, asking questions about it. And so Dorothy is actually like a mashup of several of those real women who did come out. And a lot of the events, and some of them seem pretty far out there, are actually based on fact. So I had a really strong sense of Dorothy from those stories and those women who came out. And they were kind of unkindly called the Bourneville spinsters, because most women, of course, you couldn't work if you got married. So if you wanted to have a career or a job, then you couldn't marry. Dorothy is a war widow, so she's a bit different, still really pining after her darling Freddie. And Maisie, I wanted to get the local perspective on what it was like to work in a factory in a town which wasn't used to factories. There was the zinc works, but that was it. And to the girls in Hobart at the time, because it was very hard times after the First World War, getting a job at Cadbury's was just the pinnacle. They paid well. They looked after their staff, all this kind of stuff that a girl Maisie's age wouldn't normally have. And she'd been working for 4 years by now. She's 18 at the start of the book. She'd already been out in the workforce for 4 years. And there is this thing, as you know, of giving your characters the hardest time possible. So she has quite a few pressures on her to keep that job and to improve her prospects, including her little sister, who's so bright and is about to turn 14 and will have to go out to work, as everyone had to. And Maisie just really wants to have the money to keep her in school. So that's a driving force for her. And I love the Glebe. I set them in the Glebe because it's such a wonderful suburb of Hobart. The streets are so steep. I was there just today, poking around and going, oh, they're so steep.
Well, that comes across so much in your writing. Because and again, to say everybody that you're in for such a treat when you read The Chocolate Factory, because Mary Lou manages to take you to those places so well. Like, you do feel like you're climbing those hills in the Glebe. And the smell of the factories is so evocative in your writing as well. Like, everything that goes on, there's a big fire occurs at one stage, and it reminded me of the opening chapter of The Last of the Apple Blossom, your first novel, which is set in the apple industry of Tasmania, and during the big bushfires. And you just have that terrific gift of putting the reader right where the action is happening. So yeah, thank you. As I said, I read it here in Dublin, and I felt like I was in Tasmania in 1920s. I should have said this at the start, actually. Everybody, you're in for a treat, because not only is Mary Lou a terrific writer, but she is also a wonderful singer. And I coaxed her, well, I didn't have to coax, I begged her, to be honest, to say, would she be able to perform for us tonight, as well as talk about her book. So that will be coming up just before we finish up in about 15 minutes' time, because the book is set in the 1920s, and Mary Lou has this wonderful setup that all the women that came out from the UK are all living in a hostel together. So you get the women at work, but you also get the relationships that form, the jealousies, and the different little friendship groups are set up. There's this beautiful scene where everybody is around the piano So just to whet your appetite, Mary Lou's going to take us back to the 1920s with her singing voice as well as her writing voice as well. Mary Lou, the strong theme through the book is women trying to change, and also be in charge of their lives. As I said, you've managed to intertwine so many themes here in an unputdownable book, and several women do take on those roles more commonly held by men. Was that a deliberate choice by you? When I'm going to write this book about a time in history, well, isn't it always a time in history where women are trying to, gain purchase on their own lives and to figure out how to reach their full potential. But that shone through for me, that Maisie, a young one, and then Dorothy, an older widow. How was that for you in the writing? Was that, as I said, something that came through once you'd created your characters, or you went into the novel going, this is what I want to show?
Look, I always want my characters to triumph against the odds. And when you write historical fiction, the odds for women are always big. They're always there. And that's one of the reasons I love historical fiction, reading it and writing it. It's because things were tough. If you're a woman, you didn't have rights. Even in The Last of the Apple Blossom, she can't get, it's the 70s and she can't get a bank loan because she's a woman. But here in the 1920s, I like the fact that Cadbury's actually did support their workers as much as they did with education. 50% of their workers are women, so there's a lot of stuff in place already. But even so, Dorothy is ambitious and Maisie is ambitious. They both want to improve their lots, and so many things are put in their path to stop that. So for me, it's about women triumphing against the odds. Where are the odds greatest? They're in. I mean, they're still there today, but in history, absolutely. And this glorious unfolding of a story where this can happen, where they do triumph, where they do, take on all the problems and all the battles, and they still come through. That's what I love. It kind of gives me hope in a way. They have a battle on their hands. They certainly do. Catherine in The Last of the Apple Blossom, goodness me, she had a battle. And Dorothy and Maisie too, absolutely.
But you're cheering them on so much as readers, because and what I also loved is that this is just after the war, and that is, it's in the background so subtly, but so deeply and sadly that everybody has been touched by it in some way. And even like when I picked up, I thought, would they have kept Cadbury going, in the UK during the war? And you think, of course they were, because the troops, the chocolate was perhaps the only bright moment in the soldiers' lives. So it was a part of the war effort, wasn't it, to keep that going. And the sorrow of damaged young men returning from the war is also in the novel. Like it's kaleidoscopic in that regard. I think, Mary Lou, in what you've done is that these are damaged people, sad people, but people with gifts and hope. And it's a real pleasure to go on a journey with people like that. And that's Dorothy. Dorothy has lost her husband in the war. She's got firsthand experience of dealing with people with shell shock and different things. And so that's that's something that goes through as well and makes you care even more, because she does. And Maisie, that's what I'd love to ask you about, like the living conditions for her in Hobart in 1920, because her father has been killed in the war as well. And it's very, very tough days for her. Could you tell me about your research for that? Their house in the Glebe, her mother, her big brother, little sister. Times are really tough for that family.
I've got to do a big shout out to the Hobart Reading Room at the State Library of Tasmania. I think it's called Tas Libraries these days, but I always think of the State Library of Tasmania. Because the amount of archival material that is available in that place. You can find anything and they will help you find it. And I have spent days and days and days in there just finding out how people lived, what the truth of the matter was, how they survived, all that kinds of stuff. And even to they have the blueprints to the factory, the original blueprints to the Cadbury factory. I had them all rolled out on a big table, looking at them all, and the designs for the cottages. So the cottage that Dorothy moves into, they have the designs for all of that. They have everything from the nitty gritty of how people lived. You've got to sort through a lot of stuff. And also Trove, big shout out to Trove as well, because journalism was a lot different back then as it is now.
Trove, to explain what Trove is, Mary Lou, perhaps you just explain that in case
it's a national library, and it's a digital resource of all newspapers, gazettes, magazines. And so you can go back and find stories in the dates that you're writing. And the journalists, they wrote so differently. They would include dialogue, and in brackets, here, when someone's making a speech. It's like reading a story. So you get a much better idea of the conditions at the time when you're reading a journalistic article. It's entertaining sometimes.
Yeah. Well, certainly all, as I said, that shines through so much in the story that you obviously had just immersed yourself in what life was like on both sides. And from a reader's point of view, thank you very much for that, because it just gives it such an authenticity too. I think I would love to get you to sing for us all in a moment, because just to evoke one of the scenes, as I said, in the hostel, before some of the women go to live in cottages on the Cadbury estate in Tasmania, they are all in a hostel together and they're sitting around in a piano. Just before we came on air to talk to you all, and thanks again, and all the comments still coming through from everybody, to say that apart from reading lots of research and looking at blueprints and the amazing meticulous research you did, Mary Lou also confessed to me that she watched Peaky Blinders, the TV series, which is set in Birmingham, which is where Dorothy comes from. And in the way that when you're writing a novel, you're a bit like a magnet, Mary Lou, aren't you? That all these iron filings come flying at you. And the song that Mary Lou is going to sing for us, she saw being performed in Peaky Blinders, which is a great sign, I reckon, that you were on the right track. So perhaps you just tell us a little bit about hostel life and what you learned about that, and then would you sing us a song that the women in your novel sing, and we can all enjoy that very much.
It's an interesting thing. Cadbury's were worried about the safety of the women, so they put them all together in a hostel under the charge of a matron. And I had a really hard time actually finding where this hostel was, and with the help of a lot of people, including Tas Libraries and a couple of history Facebook groups, we managed to pinpoint where it actually was. But Cadbury's supplied them with worthy books to read, with a sewing machine and also a piano. So they would gather around the piano every night and sing all those fabulous music hall songs, which I'm very familiar with, because at the age of 19, I was in a music hall theatre and I actually sang this particular song, and I've got some of the lyrics in the book. Usually lyrics are tricky, but because this is such an old song, we could put them in the book. So I'll just sing a tiny little bit of it, because we're about to run out of time, and just a little bit. So this is a song that Dorothy sings, that she used to sing to her husband, Freddie, when they were in love and courting at Bourneville. The boy I love is up in the gallery. The boy I love is smiling now at me. Look at him, there he is, waving his handkerchief, as merry as a robin, sitting in a tree.
Oh, more, please. I was sitting going, oh, this is lovely. Not just hearing lovely stories, but also beautiful singing. Mary Lou, I hope and I know that you're going on. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. And it's lovely to think that you performed that in Tasmania when you were 19. Yeah, I love it when life comes full circle like that. And
Yeah.
there you are back in Tasmania, for the launch of the chocolate factory.
Mm.
Tell me, you've got a good few events coming up over the next few weeks, which are all listed on your events page of your website. I know your big launch is in Tasmania tomorrow night, but it's sold out, I believe. Congratulations at Fuller's Bookshop. But the Chocolate Factory is absolutely available in bookshops all around Australia now, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And in some bookshops, you might even get a free block of chocolate if you buy a
Oh,
book.
well, there's the clincher. So many reviews from people here saying about your singing, Mary Lou. Patricia Margaret, beautiful. Jessica Gill, that was beautiful. Mary Lou Stevens. Kerry Bryant, if I ever publish my novel, I'm singing too. Woohoo. Julietta Henderson, who's another, as I said, fantastic author. Kate Solly, another author. That was beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Mary Lou. And
Uh,
thank you for bringing such great characters to life. So, as I said, lots of people joining us on Better Reading tonight have already read Chocolate Factory, and they'll be able to see you in. Just tell me where you're popping up over the next few weeks.
So I'm doing 3 library talks in Hobart while I'm here. Then I'm going to Brisbane, Avid Reader, Sunshine Coast, my old stomping ground as well, at Annie's Books, and also Rosetta's in Mullany. Sydney at Better Read Than Dead, and Melbourne, Readings Emporium and Jeffries.
Oh, fantastic. So lots of chances to talk about the beautiful characters in the Chocolate Factory. And for those of you, and I know a lot of people, in fact, Deb Christie has just said, I absolutely love the last of the Apple Blossom, and I'm at the moment loving the Chocolate Factory. Thank you. Beautiful singer, love your book. Sandra Scully, thank you, ladies. Wendy Kendall, thank you, ladies, for tonight. I will be getting this tomorrow. Beautiful. Hazel and Julie Thompson, thank you for your comments, everybody. So there's lots of opportunities to hear Mary Lou talking about the Chocolate Factory. And as you said, tonight, just in a half an hour, I hope you've got a taster of just the amazing research that has gone into it. But it's an important book, Mary Lou, I think, as well as being just a thoroughly entertaining, warm-hearted, full of amazing facts. I have to just say, I know we've only got a couple of minutes, but could you just share that how Cadbury's bar flake got invented, which pops up just in a page when you're reading the novel. One of the characters happens to mention, and this is what I mean about you'll find all these little treasures throughout the whole book as you're reading it, even when you're swept away by the plot. You go, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And that's perfect historical fiction, if you ask me. So please, perhaps we'll finish off on how flake got invented.
So it was in 1920, and one of the workers just noticed that the excess chocolate that fell over the edge of a mold would form these little curls. And when they dried, they maintained that shape. And because the Quakers don't like to waste anything, they went, let's do this. Let's make a flake. And here they are still today. Well, all these years, over 100 years later, they're still being sold.
That's fantastic. As I said, and these are the things that you glean as you read the novel. And my final question, of course, has to be: how many kilos of chocolate did you eat while you were writing the novel?
Oh, I cannot tally it, because writing it, I ate so much. Editing it, and I edited it in 6 different countries while we were slow traveling, and I would find chocolate wherever we went, and Cadbury's would be almost everywhere, but also the fabulous chocolate factories I visited along the way. And I thought, that's it, that's done. I'm over. And then I start writing articles about it, and I started eating chocolate again.
Well, you kind of have to. I have to say, like, there's nothing, to be reading. As I said, you describe scenery so beautifully, but you also describe, the taste of chocolate so well. It's extremely hard not to want to, be smeared in chocolate while you're reading the book, for sure.
Yeah.
As what Malvina has said, let's hear it for the flake. Deb Christie, you honestly know how to write the most beautiful books, Mary Lou Stevens. Keep up the good work. I love, love, love you in your books. So
Thank
all
you.
lovely, just so many beautiful comments about it. So just to say, everybody, before we say goodnight, this is Mary Lou's book, The Chocolate Factory, with this magnificent, evocative cover, which has all the beauty and mystery, and draws you in as the story does. You love the cover, Mary Lou, I'm sure.
Absolutely, totally in love with it. And the sky was like that in Hobart yesterday. And I said to my friend, I feel as though I'm walking through the cover of my book. Just glorious. And before we go, because we need to go, Monica, thank you so, so much for popping on this Facebook Live. It's just so glorious to see you. I know you have so many fans out there, and in your own good time, when you're ready, we'll be looking forward to another book from you.
Thank you very much. And as I said, a pleasure to be to talk with you today about a really special book, and I hope it just finds so many happy readers, Mary Lou. It deserves to. It's a gorgeous book, and I hardly recommend it to everybody. And a bar of chocolate beside as well. So, oh, and of course, the question I always have to ask: is there another book on the way for you after this one?
Yes, there definitely is. It's I seem to have discovered this niche of historical foodie fiction set in Tasmania.
Right.
And this one was inspired by being on Constitution Dock and seeing the old Peacocks jam factory on one side and the IXL Henry Jones jam factory on the other, and going, what's the story here? Stay tuned and you will find out.
So they're jam wars as well as chocolate spies. Well, everybody, you've heard it here first. There are jam wars. So, everybody, please go and read Mary Lou's wonderful book. As I said, you'll get swept away and into the world of women and industry and chocolate spies and romance and the making of an amazing part of our history, Australian history. So, Mary Lou, congratulations. And big thanks to Better Reading for hosting us both today, and to Dex, who always makes all the technical side of it really easy. And loads of thanks to all of you for your great comments too.
Thank
and
you so much.
I think, yeah, happy reading, everybody. And I think, will we get Mary Lou to sing one more verse, everybody? I think we will. Yeah, one more, Mary Lou, please, just to sing us out tonight.
I'll just sing it again. And
yeah, do that, please.
Because the light in Tasmania is fading. I was in natural sunlight, and now it's finally getting dark, and I'm getting darker here. The boy I love is up in the gallery. The boy I love is smiling now at me. Look at him, there he is, waving his handkerchief, as merry as a robin, sitting on a tree.
Perfect ending. Thanks so much, Mary Lou. Beautiful to talk to you. The Chocolate Factory by Mary Lou Stevens, everybody. Bravo, Mary Lou. Thank you so much.